that's really how the idea was born for DryBar. And it was amazing. And and then
And how many are there now?
150.
Amazing.
And we sold it. So now I don't have
And what was that like?
I mean, it was an interesting, like, unwinding.
What a joy to meet you.
Oh, likewise. Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Big mission to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health.
Yeah.
And
I'm pretty well versed with your work. I discovered your book, one of your books, a couple of years ago, and like could not put it down and was just so fascinated by, the fact that it really stuck out to me that, I think the example you used, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher it a little, but it was like, if you break your arm, they take an x-ray of it so they can see where they broke your arm and how to treat it. And, nobody's looking, or maybe before you, nobody was looking at the brain. And it's crazy.
So your goal, learn about your brain, especially as it relates to anxiety.
Yes. I think, talking about my irritability and, I noticed it a lot too, even as we were building DryBar, because before DryBar, I was always like, my parents called me like the late bloomer. My brother, who's my business partner, he was like the overachiever. My brother was like that. My brother was like starting businesses when he was like 18 and he was really good at school naturally. But he and my dad really battled and they fought a lot. So Micah was either being praised or like in trouble. And I was just like a wallflower watching it all happen and very like in the background and seemingly like a pretty shy kid, which is not really my personality as I've grown up, and the fact that like Michael and I had so much success with DryBar. I mean, my parents were like, what? Wouldn't have seen that coming. Like so much like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like selling me short, like just was like just stunned that I turned into such a success, But the bigger point I was making was that once we started DryBar and it started to get, at first it was going to be one shop and I would be in the shop and then pick my kids up for school. They were like 3 and 5 when we started DryBar. And then it got so busy and so crazy. And then, we started growing and expanding. And now I'm in this role of like running this thing with my brother. And I had not really done that at that scale. For sure. And, then it was like a pressure cooker. It was amazing. It was like being on a rocket ship, but a lot of pressure, it's like all these people working for us. I was trying to figure out how to like be a boss. I was trying to figure out how to treat people. I was trying to figure it all out. And I think it was like, and my first marriage, wasn't right. We were like best friends, which is ironically like very much modeling of my parents' marriage, which was like they were best friends. They ended up getting divorced when they were in their 50s and their marriage was like a little bit of a fraud. And anyways, that's a whole other story. But I think I mimicked that relationship with my first marriage. And we were like best friends and we had kids like a year after we got married. And then 3 years after that, we started DryBar. So it was like, thing after thing. And he's the creative, Cam, my first husband, is the creative force behind DryBar. He was an advertising guy. We met in New York City. And just, when DryBar happened, my world just turned so upside down and I, sunk everything into that. And, my relationship with Cam was just, lacked intimacy and like sex. And I mean, this is all in my book. So it's like, and he knows it. And it just was like, this wasn't right. And we both knew it, but we were together for 16 years. And then finally I realized this isn't what I wanted. The very long-winded point I'm making is just that it was, I'm so reactive. I'm such a reactive person.
Were you like that as a child?
No.
When did that start?
So. I think it started, I think that I felt when I moved to New York in my 20s, I was so focused on finding a husband and having kids. And I really didn't want to be alone. I really wanted to be with somebody. and I really wanted to have babies. I could not wait to have a kid. That was like the only thing I could think about. And so I'm like a dog with a bone. If there's something I want, like watch out and about anything in my life. I'm very, very driven in that way, which I think has served me well in business. On the personal side, not so much. But so, and so I got into this marriage with this man that I shouldn't have married. He tried to call the wedding off a month before because he was like, we don't have sex anymore. Like, I don't know if we should get married. And I was like, no, we should. We have such a great relationship and it's so good. And it wasn't though. And I knew it deep down, but I didn't, the wedding was planned and I was like calling off the wedding. Like that would have been humiliating. And
so the question is,
sorry,
we should focus on the question.
Yeah.
When did it start? When did the irritability
I think it started
start where if somebody poked you,
I think it started in the pressure cooker of DryBar. And like, we had raised $75 million and there was like a lot riding on this thing and there was a lot of pressure. I was in this like unhappy marriage and I was, avoiding and I was, I used to get really mad at him too. And I would yell at him and I would just, and I think I was just unhappy in my marriage.
So you don't remember this as a child?
I don't remember it as a child.
You don't remember this in junior high, high school?
No, I was pretty like mellow back then. I mean, I feel like I came alive in the DryBar era. It's like when I really came into my own, like my confidence and I was like, oh my God, like, holy shit, look at this thing. And this was my idea. Like it was such an awakening, I think, for me because I was
How did you get the idea for it?
Because I was, I have naturally curly hair and I grew up in South Florida where your naturally curly hair gets even frizzier when you're in that kind of humidity, and I hated going to like the discount chains. And that was kind of the big aha for DryBar was like, there's high-end salons where you're paying and it's variable pricing, you're paying so much, or there's the discount chains where you're sitting next to a kid getting a haircut, the lighting's bad, the ambiance off. It's like, why isn't there something in the middle? And my mobile blowout is what gave me really the idea to start a brick and mortar instead of me going to them. They come to me, but, to keep the price point low. And, the idea was it's this, high end feeling and affordable luxury experience. And we have flat screen. I don't know if you've ever been in one, but we have flat screen TVs that, are playing chick flicks and we would serve champagne and you're sitting at a bar. You're not sitting in front of a mirror because that's also was a big learning for me in my mobile business. I was usually doing women's hair like in their living room or kitchen. So not in front of a mirror, which totally took the pressure off both of us because I could they wouldn't see their hair until I was ready for them to see their hair. So they couldn't pick it apart and couldn't micromanage me. And like staring at yourself in a mirror for an hour is like, on women, that can be a little rough, Right. So all of those things. And so that's really how the idea was born for DryBar. And that was, in 2010 and it was amazing. And and then
how many are there now?
150.
It's amazing.
And we sold it 3 years ago. So now I don't have.
And what was that like for you selling it?
I mean, it was an interesting unwinding because we knew we were going to sell it. An interesting time, but I was okay with it. I wanted to pursue other things and I was getting some opportunities for some potential TV shows. And so I think I was starting to detach then. And because Cam and I had split and there was a further detachment. And then it was just a weird time because I was not going to the office anymore. And this was also pre-COVID. So it wasn't like people were working really from home yet. And I became very lost. And
And had you ever experienced depression before that?
Never. Always. Well, not really, but my mom died a couple years before this too. And she had lung cancer and we found out in October and she died in January. I had a therapist later tell me that I, had situational depression. And the reason that we figured that out was because also to your question, I started to get really bitchy to Cam, to my husband at the time. I was irritable, really irritable. And we went to talk.
Which could have been grief.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
so,
I think.
Just if I get this right, chronic stress.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Building a business from nothing to 150 locations and raising $75 million. It's chronic stress.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also incredibly stressful. It's not your training. Mm-mm. It's not what your expertise is, right? But you're brilliant. You had this really great idea and it fit a need and then it explodes. So you're on this wild ride.
Yeah.
We do a study called SPECT, and SPECT, single photon emission computed tomography. It's a nuclear medicine study that looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works.
Okay.
And it basically tells us three things: good activity, too little, or too much. And then my job is to balance. Here's our resident example of a really healthy brain.
Okay.
You actually have a stunningly beautiful brain.
Did you hear that?
Like, I looked at this and I'm like,
come on. What constitutes stunningly beautiful brain?
It's full, it's even, it's symmetrical. So if we go back to healthy, it looks healthy.
Wow.
And
it's like the best compliment I've ever gotten.
Just super healthy.
Wow, that's so great to hear. I really thought it was.
It's also super busy.
I know. I mean, that's not surprising.
So blue is average activity. Red and white are the most active parts of the brain. Your emotional brain, it's on frickin' fire. You have a great cerebellum. And you're probably whip smart and visual.
I'm very visual.
But
and very I think that I'm very quick. I don't know that I'm super like smart, like book smart, but I'm very intuitive and very quick on my feet.
But resilient like crazy. That's really awesome. But your memory and focus. I think all of this is related to the busyness in your brain. So to calm it down. So
what do we do to calm it down? So
I make something called happy saffron. And I've been following the science of saffron for 20 years. Like
the herb?
Spice. Yeah. First study came out in 2004. Head to head against Prozac. It's equally effective.
Wow.
Start with saffron.
Okay.
And good multiple vitamin fish oil and a brain boost. And then something for anxiety when you get anxious. Questions?
No. I mean, I feel like we covered it all.
I actually have an app called Happy Brain on Happy Brain. I love Happy Brain so much. There's hypnosis audios. Like you're anxious, just listen to one and do what I say. Okay. It'll calm you down.
Okay. This is definitely the most fun I've ever had doing a podcast. That's for sure. It's like a podcast / therapy session.